Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as Mayor Ed Gainey delivers his preliminary budget for 2023. This budget is centered around the mayor's vision for the city of Pittsburgh and the work he has tasked his staff to work towards every single day. Safe neighborhoods, welcoming communities, thriving people. In a moment, Mayor Gainey will deliver his vision, priorities, and highlights of the 2023 budget, followed by Deputy Mayor Jake Pollock to present the details. After, the mayor and his team from OMB will take some questions. Thank you. And now, I'll hand it over to the mayor of the great city of Pittsburgh, the Honorable Ed Gainey. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Today I will share the first draft of the administration's proposed 2023 operating and capital budget. But before I begin, I want to acknowledge the members of my administration who are here today and will be presenting the details of the budget. I'd like for you, Jake Pollock, Deputy Mayor. I also want to talk Pat Cornell, Deputy Director of OMI. I want to thank you for the work that you put in, and also for the whole OMI Operation and Budget and Management and Budget team. I want to thank you. The 2023 proposed operating and capital budget are a reflection of our priorities and place a strong emphasis on the following: safe neighborhoods, including infrastructure, housing, the environment, and long life learning. We also will focus on welcoming communities, including resident empowerment, cultural celebration, and social fulfillment, and thriving people, including economic mobility, physical mobility, and critical communities and equity. When I entered office, I made a promise to keep the transparency and engagement at the forefront of our administration. And I am proud to say that I believe this budget process has done that and will continue to be a direct reflection of the commitment that we made to the city. We started the work of honoring this commitment earlier this year when we expanded our preliminary engagement around the budget process, and have plans to do so in the coming weeks before I make my final budget address to City Council in November. This year, the Office of Budget and Management, with help from the Neighborhood Service Team in the Mayor's Office and the Department of Innovation and Performance, hosted 5 public meetings virtually, utilized an online survey to capture opinions, and developed a digital mapping tool to capture project ideas from the public. The information and feedback we obtained during this process were invaluable, and will continue to impact our decision-making as we finalize the proposed budget. We had an historic engagement in our budget process, including a 500% increase in utilization of our online survey via Engage Pittsburgh. We had 67 neighborhoods out of 90 represented, and more than 1,000 project ideas were generated. We also discovered that residents prioritized in our capital budget, and this is the feedback we received from them. Infrastructure was the #1 priority. This was also reflected in the survey that was distributed with more than 400 requests for complete street projects. With the collapse of the Fern Hollow Bridge, less than 100 days into entering office, my administration learned firsthand the critical investment that was needed for the city's infrastructure. Residents also prioritized the environment, housing, physical mobility, and equity in that order. I am proud to say that our preliminary budget reflects significant investments in each one of those areas. Since the beginning of my term, I have spent a lot of time listening to our residents, our civic leaders, and our city employees about how they see our city and our shared priorities. I tasked my staff and my department directors to review their budgets and find ways to enhance our city safety, help us make the city more welcoming, and ensure all of our citizens have an opportunity to thrive in our city. What you will see in our proposal is the best effort to move the needle in those areas. I have always said that there is no microwave meals in growth, and we can't expect to achieve the entirety of our vision in our first budget. Just can't. It's going to take years to get it done. But I made a priority that we will no longer put off the critical investment in our core public services. We must have a clarity of purpose around making the long overdue investments in our staffing, equipment, and frontline departments. I visited with and spoke with too many of the dedicated public servants who keep our city running, and I know firsthand the hard work they do each and every day in our city, each and every day. Our hard work public servants deserve to be safe while they're serving. That safety comes at a cost, but we cannot put a price tag on the safety of our citizens' lives. My team has done a tremendous job in bringing together a budget that speaks to the values that we get up every day, every single day, and work on: safe neighborhoods, welcome communities, and in a city that people have an opportunity to thrive in. When we invest in rebuilding our city's critical infrastructures, we are investing in making sure that our neighborhoods are safe for everyone who lives there. Every neighborhood should be safe. Our budget reflects this. We are proposing the creation of a new bridge maintenance unit to care for the bridges that we already have, as well as the new units that will allow us to rapidly develop plans to rehabilitate our bridges or design new ones when we need to. We know that climate change is having a growing impact on our city. The increase in heavier rainstorms is leading to more frequent landslides, and that is why we are investing in the creation of a new walls and slopes unit within the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure so we can be proactive in our work in helping keep our neighborhoods safe. Our budget is both an investment in improving core city services and improving the efficiency of local government. And we firmly believe that this will lead to a safer city for all of us. We are investing an additional $4 million in staffing and equipment in the Department of Public Works to dramatically increase our capacity to respond to snow events in the winter and overcome a backlog of maintenance of vacant lots and public space in the summer. As you all know, public safety has been one of our most important issues we have taken on as an administration. And we are proud of the fact that we are moving forward with the expansions of our Reach Out on the Street Roots program with OCHS and Office of Violence Prevention to bring needed services and violence intervention into every public safety zone in this city. We are investing in new swiftwater rescue equipment to be prepared for flooding events, and upgrading our 10-year-old self-contained breathing apparatus in order to protect the lives of our fire, EMS, and other first responders who work in hazardous conditions. This budget reinforces our commitment to making Pittsburgh the safest city in America, and that means keeping the people who work for the city safe as well. We are allocating funding for a new investigator in the Office of Municipal Investigations who will be focused on building a safe and welcoming workplace for city employees by investigating allegations of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Celebrating the diversity of our great city is key to making sure that Pittsburgh is welcoming and open for business for everyone. Removing barriers to those who wish to do business with the city government is critical to making a welcoming and thriving city for all of us. To that end, we are funding a new disparity study in order to update, refine, and expand the city's goals for inclusion of MWBE vendors in our city procurement practices. This is the first time this has happened in over 20 years. A welcoming city means providing all of our residents with affordable and equitable access to parks and open spaces in their neighborhoods. Like many departments in our city, the Parks and Recreation Department is undergoing a transformation in order to best serve our city. This reorganization into 4 program areas will help focus our work and bring efficiency to our beloved city services. It also means transferring the maintenance of our city pools to create one integrated aquatics team. We are proposing a new position in our city parks department in order to provide new opportunities for organized sports for our children. We also recognize that our frontline city park staffs are an invaluable community asset and resource, investing in them by proposing to increase their salaries, as currently they are among the lowest paid members of our city workforce. A thriving Pittsburgh means creating new opportunities for people to have good jobs and access to new pathways to prosperity and affordable homes to live in. Our budget includes a phased increase in the Housing Opportunity Fund. These critical supports for affordable housing developments ensures greater production and preservation of long-term affordable housing units and allows for continued investment in home ownership and home repair programs. We are preparing the future leaders of our city with our new Pathways to Prosperity program with Pittsburgh Public Schools, and are requesting new funding for Pittsburgh Public School students to have a paid internship through our Prepare to Prosper initiative launched earlier this month. We are also seeking new funding for additional talent recruiters to proactively seek out qualified candidates for city employment and ensure that all Pittsburghers have access to city jobs. In order to rebuild our city and create new opportunities for growth, we must modernize our work in zoning and development to increase staff capacity and accelerate reviews in the planning department. We are making key investments to fully implement the one-stop permitting program and are creating specialized commercial and residential inspection units to shorten the permitting and inspection timeline for owner-occupied residential projects and create a career progression pipeline from residential to commercial inspectors. One of our foundational principles for my administration has always been and will continue to always be, we are here to serve the people. That's number one. We are here to serve the people. In order to improve core city services, response time, and save taxpayer dollars, we are embarking on a reorganization of departments to maximize our ability to serve. Our Office of Neighborhood Services within the Mayor's office will now be the new home of 311. By working together, community engagement and resident services will be improved. They will be working together with the Department of Innovation and Performance to update the city's database, tracking and routing of resident services requests to improve the timelessness, reliability, and accountability of constituents' services for all city departments. Our Office of Communication within the Mayor's office will be the new home for the city channel, our print shop, and website teams. By combining these departments, we will more effectively communicate the work of city government. We are committed to our bold vision for our city. And I believe that this budget we introduced today helps us become the safest city in America, a city where everyone feels welcome, and a city where everyone who lives here has the ability to thrive here. I have always said that together we can make Pittsburgh a city for all. And with your help, we are going to make Pittsburgh a model for effective and efficient government. This step will help guide us as we formalize our budget ahead of presenting it to City Council in November. Our neighborhood service teams will be working to get this information out to everybody in the city. We look forward to hearing from you. As we continue to define this budget, we still want your input. Now I would like to introduce the Deputy Director of Office of Management and Budget, Jake Pollock, who will provide more details of the 2023 proposed capital budget and the operating budget. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jake Pollock, Deputy Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh and Director of the Office of Management and Budget. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. First of all, Mayor, I just want to say once again, thank you for your leadership, your vision, and your guidance in this process. As I'm about to detail, the City of Pittsburgh is in a strong financial position. At the same time, the continuing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impacts on our economy present temporary challenges as we look into some of the out years. And I can say with certainty that there were easier ways to arrive at a balanced budget that would not have maximized our delivery for city residents. And so your constant reminder to us to do everything we can to, as you said, serve the people and to maximize the ways in which we preserve our fiscal sustainability while at the same time delivering the highest quality service possible drove my whole team to deliver a budget that is as aggressive as possible for our residents. So I thank you for that. I also just very quickly reiterate your thanks to the members of the OMB team. As you mentioned, thank you, Mayor. You mentioned Deputy Director Patrick Cornell, who's with us today, who was instrumental to this process. I'll also just quickly thank the rest of the operating team, Kirsten, Sherry, Liz, and Adam, as well as the capital budget team, Dave, Eric, and Brendan. So thank you all for the work that you did on this, this very important step forward for this administration for our city. Before I go into the state of the city's finances, I'll just quickly move to the next slide to provide some additional data to a point that the mayor mentioned, which is the community engagement process that we went through in preparation for the fiscal year 2023 capital and operating budgets. The map on your screen shows the combined feedback that OMB received on our capital and operating surveys. This marks a historic increase in public engagement in this process, and it shows where those feedback points were most concentrated. It also continues to show areas where, though our engagement has improved, there remain gains to be had in ensuring that the public is fully engaged. And as the mayor mentioned, we'll be conducting additional community engagement processes in the next 6 weeks between the release of this preliminary budget and the mayor's final budget address to ensure that those communities are heard from in detail. Turning to the city's finances, I wanted to take a step back and mention the ways in which the COVID-19 pandemic have affected the city's financial position, the ways in which the critical support of the federal government through the American Rescue Plan Act have ensured that the worst of that impact did not hit cities, states, and other local governments, for which we're very grateful, but also the ways in which it presents ongoing challenges that we'll confront in the course of this 5-year plan. So if we turn to the next slide, the next few slides show a summary of the target budget and revenue projections for the city over the course of the next 5 years. These materials are also included in the budget documents that are now live on the city website, and I believe in the material that the members of the press here received. This first table shows city revenues as projected for next year and for the subsequent 4 years. And shows that, again, revenue recovery for the city of Pittsburgh in the aftermath of the worst of the COVID pandemic is strong. We see strong growth and continued financial health on all of our major revenue categories. At the same time, we notice, particularly if you look at the miscellaneous revenues line for fiscal years 25 and 26, a temporary drop in revenue. That reflects the point at which American Rescue Plan dollars, which were provided by the federal government, roll out of our city budget. So for the current fiscal year, 2022 and 23 and 24, we're continuing to rely on significant support from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, to keep our operating budget in balance. We will have a balanced budget after that and are happy to project a 5-year balanced budget, but the loss of ARPA funding creates a temporary tightening of our budget opportunities, and we've accounted for that in this budget. We maintain positive revenues and, as you'll see in the next slide, a positive revenue result in all years, but we have to manage the impact of COVID as we produce a 5-year balanced budget. On the next slide, you'll see our projected expenditures. These expenditures include continued support for current positions and operations, plus the critical investments that the mayor mentioned in his remarks around expanding our ability to provide basic services through the Department of Public Works, the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, and all city departments to improve the service level for all residents. As you'll see on the operating result line, we maintain a balanced and positive budget result in all years of the 5-year plan, but pointing to the same issue I mentioned previously, that result becomes temporarily constricted for 2 years, fiscal years 2025 and 2026. That is, once again, a result of the fact that at the end of 2024, ARPA funds no longer support our operations. You'll see that by 2027, we fully recover from that temporary dip. For that reason, we are strongly confident in our city's ability to maintain an effective level of service, but also that we are dealing with some fiscal constraints, temporary though they may be, that we need to address in our next budget plan. As you all know, under state and local law, we are required to maintain a balanced budget. We're also required to maintain a healthy reserve ratio, essentially a rainy day fund. The percentage of total expenditures as a share of the reserve fund need to remain in excess of 10%. And we're also required to ensure that the annual payments on debt that we issue to support our capital budget remains below 12% of total expenditures. So if you look at the bottom two lines on the screen, you'll see that this budget remains in compliance with those requirements. But in fiscal years 2025 and 2026, it skews close to those limits. Again, that's a result of the one-time impacts of ARPA funding leaving our budget, and we are confident that we've presented a fiscally sound and prudent budget that, while hewing close to those limits for that reason, shows strong recovery after the end of that period. If we look at the next slide, this is not fully to scale, but it illustrates some of the dynamics I was just describing. The blue line on this graph represents what city revenues and the city budget as a whole would have looked like in the absence of ARPA funding. The city was experiencing strong revenue growth prior to COVID-19, and then as we're certainly not alone in this, as every level of government, and in fact every business in our country experienced in the onset of the pandemic, a rapid and fairly, without it being addressed, destructive loss in revenue and negative turn in financial condition. Without ARPA funding, our city budget would have dipped into a deficit, and our reserve balance and debt service ratios would have fallen out of compliance with state and local rules. That's represented by the blue line on this graph. The purple line on this graph shows the ways in which ARPA funding was instrumental in stabilizing the city budget by, when it became available, moving us into a balanced position. And we've seen, since that funding became available, the same type of positive revenue growth that we were experiencing before and expect to experience after the full impacts of the pandemic have been absorbed by our economy. However, we see a new challenge at the end of fiscal year 2024, moving into 2025, when we are no longer able to expend ARPA funds to support operations, and so we see a one-time drop in our position. I'm thankful to say that because of the impact of ARPA in delaying that trend hitting our budget, we were able to allow for a maintained positive balance, though we dip closer to the line. Immediately after that adjustment hits the books, if you will, we see the same revenue recovery that we've been experiencing in recent years. So by fiscal year 2027, we're back to normal. The net impact of all of this is simply to say that because of the prudent and financially responsible actions of some of our predecessors in incorporating a 5-year planning process into the city code, we are aware of these challenges, and we are taking them into account even as we plan for new expenditures next year. And so with all of the ambitious proposals and sorely needed investments in basic city services that the mayor detailed, we have nonetheless been able to prepare a budget that remains in balance for all 3 of the standards that we have to meet. And that took a great deal of work, for which I will again thank the mayor for his leadership and the OMB team for the hard work that it took to preserve that result. On the final slide, I'll just reiterate that our debt service ratio remains in compliance with the law, and after fiscal year 2026 becomes much more positive. Again, we're falling into what I would describe as a brief period in fiscal years 2025 and 26 when we've lost the support of ARPA, but are 2 years shy of a major improvement in the city's debt position, as exemplified on this slide, which is in essence the end of some of the bond issuances that the city took out during its financial crisis under Act 47. So with this 5-year plan, which for the first time includes fiscal year 2027, we really see the light at the end of the tunnel that we entered in Act 47 and has continued as a result of the financial challenges from COVID. We are now able to project the extraordinarily strong position of the city on an operating, debt, and capital basis beginning in fiscal year 2027. In the interim, we're taking every step necessary to ensure the continued solvency of the city's resources while also making vital investments in core services that have been put off for too long. So with that, I want to again thank the mayor for his guidance and leadership in this process, assure the public that the state of the city's finances, even in uncertain and challenging times, is extremely strong. And once again, thank the entire OMB team for their work in achieving this product. There are also 2 more folks that I neglected to mention who are in the room with us today who are part of our team who were instrumental here. Chief Operating and Administrative Officer Lisa Frank and Chief Economic Development Officer Kyle Centolopoli, who worked closely with all city departments and related agencies to shepherd their requests through our process and arrive at this result. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor.